As we transition to Hannah's discussion, you're going to get a sense of, you want to work from here up in the podium? All right. But we're going to get a sense of how some of this data is actually being used in a practical application and how this technology is actually being brought to market, commoditized, and now exported. So Hannah Hess, over to you.
Hi, so I'm Sam's student. I took his cybersecurity class last semester, and through the class, we did a research project. And so I was really interested in cybersecurity, and when I was thinking about my project, I looked back. I spent 7 months abroad in Shanghai, and I noticed that in China's infrastructure, they were using artificial intelligence in all sorts of places. They had facial recognition in the subways. There was talks of using drones to monitor traffic. And it sort of led me to wonder, why is China, at least in terms of implementing artificial intelligence, so much ahead of the United States? So I went and explored a little bit in the different privacy details of the two countries, and then the ability to acquire enough data to make it happen. And then I went and I found the ET City Brain project by Alibaba. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the details of this project. So this project is implemented in Hangzhou in China, and it uses a lot of data from the city, including the traffic grid, police and emergency vehicles, public transportation, and it connects their entire infrastructure to create effectively a modern smart city. So they're using data from the bus stations, the road network structure, static map data, passenger vehicle and taxi GPS data, traffic camera and signal data, and traffic police data. The different technologies that they use that the Alibaba talks about using openly are Informatica and Predix for data quality and analysis, video, Dragonfly Eye and Face++ to create an agile algorithm service platform and a visual computing service platform, SAS and I2, Orator and WebSphere to provide the final services of traffic event detection, congestion prediction, emergency vehicle dispatching, and traffic signal optimization. Where's the, how do I go to the next? Oh, there we go. Oops. There we go. So one of the main differences that makes this able to happen in China and not in the United States is the Chinese view on privacy. So the manager of AI, Alibaba, said a quote that I think really exemplifies this is, in China, people have less concerns with privacy, which allows us to move ahead. So it got cut off a little bit. But basically there, the privacy laws in China are much less defined. So the network operators have to explicitly inform users of the data that they're collecting from them and how they're going to be using them, but they're also allowed to collect any data that is relevant to the service they provide. So as long as they tell people that they're collecting data, they're able to use it, and but you can think of different loopholes of how they can collect more data that might be relevant but isn't really explicitly defined as to how they're using it or how it's relevant or anything like that. So getting into a little bit more about what this system does. So they're able to do city event detection and analysis, so they can recognize different traffic events and then alert appropriate response teams of these events. They use video footage to recognize accidents and analyze traffic patterns, and they integrate this with smart vehicle dispatching technology to speed up the dispatching of different emergency vehicles, such as police cars and ambulances. They store all the data on previous events and current events, so they get different data about the distribution of event types, how accurate the system is, and the averages and totals of different metrics. So how many total accidents were there in this month or that month, and then they can use that to make future predictions and further aid their system. The next portion of the system is city governance and public safety. So they're able to recognize potentially dangerous events in the city, such as vehicles that are speeding or out of control or otherwise hazardous to people around them. They're able to improve the efficiency and security of emergency response times. So they'll be able to, for example, say like on this road, there's a speeding vehicle and the police officers can get to them much more quickly than if they just have to wait for them to pass a police officer. So this uses more video footage of artificial intelligence algorithms, and they can predict when and where unsafe scenarios are occurring, as well as alert emergency vehicles to get there in time. Another portion of this is traffic grid optimization. So this uses data from the road infrastructure, so how the city is laid out, previous data about the network and the road, video cameras, online platforms including AutoNavi and Weibo, and they can analyze traffic conditions, causes of traffic conditions, and optimize traffic lights accordingly. So they'll take into account the speed of the traffic, as you can see there, in different areas, how long queue lengths are at certain intersections. So if different intersections have really long queues, they might change the traffic lights in that intersection to speed it up, and they can get traffic moving much more quickly. They'll also look at how long street lights are, so how long is a light on green or red, and how is that affecting the traffic flow, as well as the volume of traffic flow at different intersections. So what percent of cars are moving through here, and how can we optimize traffic lights so that the whole traffic system is sped up and commute times are decreased. They also look at public transportation data. So you can see on the left side, the bus is counting how many people are on it and how many seats are empty. So that's one example of the data that they're collecting there. So the whole goal with that is to increase passenger volume in public transportation and overall reduce commuter delays. So they're trying to just make the whole city more efficient. So again, they're using a lot of data from online platforms, and again, including AutoNavi and Weibo. Street video cameras, so looking at how many people are waiting for the buses at different bus stops. Wi-Fi probes, like you mentioned in the previous talk, like how many people are here at different times in different locations. And cell phone carriers, again, taking the same idea into account, how many people are where, how long are people in different places for certain periods of time, and how is this affecting overall commuter traffic and whatnot. So they're taking into account how many people are getting on and off buses at different locations, how many seats are empty on buses for different portions of the trip. So could more people be getting on this portion? Where are people going? And how can we just make public transportation overall more effective? In addition, just to buses, they look at taxis. So they're looking at how many taxis are being dispatched at different times of the day, and could this be more effective? So overall, they're sort of just trying to use all of this data, real time and previous, to match the supply and demand. So supply of public transportation and the passengers' demand. And the overall goal is to reduce passenger delay, increase passenger volume, and just make their commuting much more efficient. So here we have some screenshots from Alibaba's website where they showed what these systems might look like. So in the top left corner, we see the traffic optimization. So you see some examples of where they have different warnings, and they have just like the total metrics on one side and the individual alerts on the left side. Then we see the city detection and event analysis. So this is an example of when they saw a hazardous vehicle coming and they wanted to alert police officers and emergency vehicles to get there as soon as possible, while also showing you the total overall data. Then we have community governance and public safety, another hazardous vehicle that they're talking about, and then you can see they have the overall mass transit vehicle recognition. So that will just show you like where different vehicles that are speeding and things are. And then we have public transport and vehicle dispatch. So overall, this system effectively will hook up Hangzhou's traffic infrastructure and just make it all more efficient in terms of public safety, commuting, and public transportation. So another quote from an Alibaba engineer that I think sums this up very well is, "The scattered and seemingly useless data is now put into great use." So again, this is data that is out there already. It exists. They're not really creating new data. They're just collecting it and now using it to put together to make a more efficient city. So overall, after they implemented it, they looked at the previous results of the city and compared it. So the accident report time was reduced, and they were able to identify accidents with 92% accuracy. So They weren't perfect with their algorithms, but that's a high accuracy. So they're able to see, okay, this is an accident for sure, and then get vehicles to the accident much more quickly, which is really beneficial. So then overall, that reduced emergency response vehicle time by 50%. So you're able to cut the time that emergency responders are able to get to accidents in half, which is huge. Traffic speed was increased by about 15%. So commuters' trips were much shorter, and that's just by creating optimized traffic grid and having the traffic flow through much more efficiently. And then there was a 17% higher passenger volume on public buses. So the public transportation is almost by 1/5 being utilized more efficiently. Going back to the privacy implications of City Brain. So again, this is seemingly useless data put into great use, but this data is very important to individuals if you're hooked up to it. So what does the city have access to? If you're able to connect this data with an individual, the city effectively has the location, action, and behavior of everyone in the city. So while they might not need an individual's like driver's license number or vehicle registration, the city does have access to that, and the system has access to your license plate number. One of the aspects of the system is that they can recognize the make and model of the car, and they can see the license plate number. And then that could theoretically be hooked up to your personal identity. And then they can see where are you going, when are you going there, and establish patterns for yourself. In addition, they can use their facial recognition technologies and see where you're going on public transportation, where you're walking. So you can see that sort of the implications really start to spiral when you combine this system with other technologies. So that leads into government misuse of personal data. If the government has access to all of this, if they're able to put it together in one, are they able to sort of go beyond where you want them to have access to your data? So in the United States, this would probably violate different privacy laws that are already in place, as well as like the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy. But in China, there aren't these established laws, and there's not this sort of established public value on privacy that the United States has. So they're able to sort of go past this, and they say, as long as they're informing them, which Alibaba is, they have it on their website, everything that they're collecting on data on individuals, they're able to do this. But that also then, who is responsible if this data gets leaked? Is it Alibaba? Is it the Hangzhou city government? Or are the citizens just out of luck and they have to figure out what to do if their personal data gets leaked? So you can see that there's not a lot of clear lines drawn here. So the privacy implications of a system like this are really important to consider. In addition, there are a lot of cybersecurity implications of a system like this, different ways that this could go wrong in technical aspects. So there could, again, going off of data breaches, beyond just who's responsible for something like a data breach, the possibility of what could happen as the result of a data breach is sort of terrifying. You could think of how a foreign attacker, if they were able to access all of this data, the different things they could do with it is crazy. They could sell individual data on sort of like a black market dark web and profit off of it. They could establish patterns of a city to plan an attack on a city very easily if they have all this data. So they need to make sure that their system is very protected. In addition, there's a dependence on a centralized system. So if the whole city is hooked up on a system like this, if there is an attack on it, the effect of that attack is greatly magnified. So if there's an attack on just one portion of it, the whole thing will get shut down, and then the city is effectively not able to function if it's relying on a system to have its streetlights function and emergency vehicles be dispatched. What happens if now it doesn't work? So there needs to be a balanced element of the system, but also still relying on humans. Different attacks that they need to consider are a denial of service or ransomware attack, where in either case the city would need to find a different backup way to function. And then also changing the training data that the algorithms run on. If these training data is changed, you're able to change the way that the algorithm is going to predict what happens. And so if an attacker is able to just put data that they want in, they can sort of just have control over how they want the system to work. So they can sort of make events that would be spiked as analogous. So say they're driving a hazardous vehicle. They could change the training data and make whatever action they're planning on doing not be caught by the system, and they could plan an attack that way. So they need to make sure that somehow their training data is very protected and no one is able to get in that way. In addition, there's algorithm reliance, so it sort of goes along with training data, but an algorithm could easily overfit or underfit if they're not updating the training data to move along with changes in the city. And if you become over-reliant on one algorithm, then you're not going to be able to make accurate predictions about what's happening with the city. So two of the main things there, it's just a problem with artificial intelligence in general, is the training data and the algorithm reliance, and you need to make sure that there's some sort of, again, balance between machines and humans, and also make sure that the data is constantly protected. They need to find a way to make sure that citizens can trust them with this sort of system. So they need to make sure that the data is protected for them and that there's sort of, I don't know, they need to just have different things in place so that the citizens feel like they trust this system. The Alibaba engineer seems very confident in it. He says, we have the most advanced state-of-the-art virus protection available. So Alibaba seems very confident that no viruses are going to be able to breach the system and that the data is going to remain safe. In the future, Alibaba is looking to expand this to different areas in China and Asia. So they're sort of trying different experiments in these different cities and then also in Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia. They're also testing out different experiments with industrial brain, which is connecting city buildings, so more of like energy efficiency use and things like that. Medical brain, which will work with hospitals and medical records, and environmental brain, which focuses mostly on air quality and pollution. So Wan Limin, the Alibaba engineer in charge of artificial intelligence, says every city has the potential of becoming a smart city as long as its data resources can be fully activated by City Brain. So again, every city could potentially be a smart city. The main boundary point here is what level of privacy are citizens in the city willing to sacrifice in order to make a city like this happen. So if you have any questions.
So I think, well done.